Hello everybody, my name is Craig Bennett, and today I'm going to get into a video to see if people are interested into a web development course. If you are at any point, then feel free to go to my Patreon, subscribe there. If you already are, then let me know in the comment section on Patreon or any other donation platform, and they will all be linked down below, and that will help out this channel tremendously. So as far as things goes, in this particular video, I want to mention that you can get a job if you actually develop skills into web development and stuff like that. It's actually very important to note because a lot of these skills, especially when you get into JavaScript, PHP, SQL, stuff like that, they are translatable to other particular jobs, not necessarily web development. And just a quick look at JavaScript with remote. Note that many of these are senior level, but if you take a look at the pay, you're talking about well within 6 figures. So that's a big thing to note. And note that these are not unicorn companies. Unicorn being stuff like Google, stuff like that. And those you can easily expect close to $500,000 in salary itself. So this is a big thing to note, is you can make quite a bit of money. Now, I highly recommend that you actually do your research to see if this is the path you want to go down, especially things like DevOps, and look at how much time, if you're going to be on call or any of that other stuff. Now, as far as things goes, I highly recommend that you get comfortable with researching things. I'll leave a link down below to this particular site, but feel free to check out things, questions on Stack Overflow, Reddit, other places. And big thing that you need to look for is code. So say, for example, if you're trying to solve a particular problem, which is pretty much what you'll be doing in the workforce, is you can simply look on Google, see if another person either gotten close to what you're looking for or have already done it, and just copy and code and use it. Yes, it might seem cheap to some, and some might say, oh, that's cheating, or a bad thing to do. But at the end of the day, your job is to get a product working and a product done. And whether you type this exact line, or someone else types that exact line, or an IDE types that exact line, your boss probably doesn't care. Your boss probably just cares, did the project get done? Did the project get done on time? And did the project get done on budget? And if they do start caring about these things, you might want to question a few things. Yes, of course, you shouldn't copy and paste all code without modifying it, but it is something that you need to be comfortable with, especially when you get into high intense environments. Now, another thing I want to mention is by doing these type of things and modifying the code, you can easily go into the inspect element into most websites and be able to copy most of the code, if not all of it, and be able to modify it to see what happens, what changed versus the original. So you can actually learn by doing that as you go through. I highly recommend doing that, even on Android applications, stuff like that. It's a great way to learn. But be comfortable with doing research, and also that will keep you current with any changes in the environment, which happens once in a while. Now, lastly, before we go further, what's the difference between HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and these other PHP and whatnot? So HTML, if we're going to build a building, for example, HTML is basically the skeleton of the building, and CSS, I would say, would be stuff like the sheetrock and stuff like that, so the walls and whatever. JavaScript would be basically the wiring, the faucet, the plumbing and whatnot. The SQL and PHP, those would be the actual utilities to hook up to the wiring and get things working. And you can have a building with just HTML. You can have a building, it's gonna suck. You can have a building with HTML and just CSS. Again, it's gonna suck. Or you can just have a building with just those three, and you don't necessarily need to have your utilities hooked up. But to really get a kick out of it, you need to understand them all. These last few, that's a little bit much for some, and you can easily have a job just focusing on those first three. but it is good to know some of these others, especially PHP, Python, and a few of these other languages. Note that JavaScript is not Java, so if you want to learn Java, then you need to learn Java. But if you want to learn JavaScript, you can learn JavaScript. Now, you can learn both, but just note that JavaScript is not Java. Now, lastly, as far as this goes, where would you see the last view? Not the first view, because that's obviously the website itself. The last view is basically stuff like database and stuff like that you will see on the back end of the systems. So this is where you're going to see a bit of money, but that's also where you're going to see a lot of time and a lot of energy on call and all the other stuff that comes with it. But there is a lot of pay that comes with that. So know what you're getting into. Do your research, ask around, stuff like that, if you really want to go down that path. But it might be worthwhile at least picking up some of that just in case, this becomes too automated. So last but not least, I highly recommend getting a IDE for any code that you write. Now note that not all IDEs are the same, but one for this, for web development, I highly recommend Visual Studio Code. Now, as far as Visual Studio Code, this is actually more of a common one for web development than anything else, but again, it's free, whatnot. You can, if you really wanted to, you can develop all your code. Doesn't really matter what. You can develop it through a text editor like Notepad. But the problem is the benefit with IDEs, most of them, is many of them can do autocompletes. So you type out something, they'll complete the rest of it. You can do corrections, showing you some errors and a few other things. Whereas the text editor, you kind of have to rely on yourself, and that's pretty much about it. So as far as that, let's jump into here. I highly recommend with the Visual Studio Code is to download for the Ascension Live server, and that way you can actually see your changes live. This is free. Feel free to download it. You will need to open a folder for it to work. I already got one open, and you may want to make as far as the first file that you wrote, make it in a habit of doing index. Now, .html basically tells the system that this is supposed to be for a browser, basically a website. So you can actually write this in a text editor right now if you want, but .html basically makes it into a website. So if we actually go take a look at this, this is our website. Yes, it's not much, but it is there. Now, one thing I want to mention at this point is note that if you do have ad blockers on or some other things, it may modify things, so like the appearance, or modify the code to not work. So note that. Now, for the IDE, the reason why I recommend it is, as you see here, if we do an exclamation point, it's giving us some options. We select that. It fills out all this, so we don't have to actually code all these little things, and we go from there. And if we do a save, a Control S, be comfortable with doing hotkeys like that, saves you a bunch of time. You can see that if we actually do a paragraph, say do that. If I actually, is it not working? I don't really know what happened there for a second, but as you see here, it works. Now note, as far as the title, where is it? Right here. Title, note that the document, so if we actually change that, as you see here, it changes the title. So it's important to when you're making your websites, as you're making your pages, that you actually use the proper titles, and that way the client, the user, will actually know what page you're on based on that. Because sometimes they bring up the pages by new tab, and they'll let them know where they're at. So as far as things goes, let's go and just real quick grab some code from here and throw it into here and save that. And as you see here, it works. As long as the code is written properly, you threw it in the right place. So let's say for just hypothetical, you know, if we go down here and write out whatever, this, because it's Chrome, it will fix a lot of your errors. So note that. Some browsers, it might not fix it. But even then, it has its limits. So if we go, like say for example, right here, you know, it's still going to try to fix it, but in many browsers that it won't know what you're doing. So that's important to note. That was actually not supposed to work, but apparently Chrome realized, oh, the code is bad. The person must be wanting a paragraph, and therefore it added that right there. So note that you have that ability, and note that you can start coding there. And again, I highly recommend that you check out this this thing right here, because this will get you into how to make buttons and images and stuff like that, and how to add CSS into your stuff. But if you want me to get more in detail, because there's a lot of things, like it doesn't tell you why do you need this and why do you need a few things. So if you want me to actually get into a detailed how-to for web development, then feel free to go to the Patreon or any of the other donation places. Donate there and let me know on that you want this and why, and I'll take a look at it and try to make a course around the reason why you want this. But anyways, hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next video.